Good morning and welcome to Friday's OTB AM. Delighted to have you along with us this morning. It's just gone 7:45 on this pretty beautiful so far Friday morning. Hope it's like that where you are. Yesterday I sat in this studio in the company of some sporting royalty in the shape of Keith Andrews, and I'm delighted to say more sporting royalty alongside me this morning. Dave McIntyre, good morning to you.
Good morning. You've upgraded from Thursday to Friday.
Well, listen,
I'd like to see that.
Some would certainly view it that way.
Mostly related to me.
You're going to be a busy man this weekend?
Yeah, I can't wait.
Both
managing to take in both Champions Cup semi-finals. Yes, so I'm on comms with the two lads, Liam Toland and Keith Wood, tomorrow. I think we're doing the whole show from the Aviva. Nathan's presenting from 1, so that's going to be epic potentially. Leinster Scarlets, and then a flight to Bordeaux Sunday morning to cover the Munster Racing game.
Long old day for you, Dave.
It will be.
My heart bleeds.
I don't think there will be many violins being taken out from the cases, no. But look, the dream of an all-Irish final is there, isn't it? I know we keep saying that, and people, mainly Ulster fans, will say, well, we had that 6 years ago. Just doesn't quite have the same
easy now
as
easy
a Munster,
does it,
Leinster European decider.
Careful as you go there is what it would be my advice to you.
It would be spectacular. I think the rivalry has suffered in the last few years.
Listen, and I also don't, like, there isn't any other rivalry in Irish rugby that competes with Leinster and Munster.
But it has been diluted a lot for me. Because they haven't met in Europe, and a lot of the Pro 14 games involve maybe half of a Leinster team against half of a Munster team in terms of their first choice players. If they were to meet in a European final in Bilbao, that certainly will not be the case. Because
it might be diluted when they are meeting in those Pro 14 games, and maybe they don't have the full teams out, and maybe they don't always mean everything that, you know, it's like a mid-season.
It doesn't mean everything.
But this will be everything.
Off the charts. This would beat 06 and 09 in terms of what's at stake, and heading to northern Spain for a couple of days in May, and
how bad
the fans, the desperate scramble for tickets. It'll be like an All-Ireland final. Well, it will be an All-Ireland final, but like an All-Ireland
I'd be interested to know, like, as somebody who comes from Leinster and then as such supports Leinster, I'm not 100% sure how I feel about a Leinster-Munster final. Like, I mean, you know, so I'd be interested to know from fans of both provinces whether, like, do you want to get the other one, or do you really, like, I mean, because it's all or nothing, all duck or no dinner at that stage. Because
it is,
it's either the sweetest day like you've ever had, or else it's the grimmest, you know.
There's no other side you would want to beat in a European final, and there's no other side you'd want to lose.
Then you want to take the gamble, Dave. This is the thing. I'm interested to know.
Leinster need to get their job done tomorrow, and then it's over to Munster.
We're getting very far ahead of ourselves, is what you're saying.
We are. We could end up with neither of them in there because they're both up against very good teams.
Now, there's a possibility Dave gets pretty grumpy over the next little bit. We are with you until 9 o'clock or thereabouts, but Dave has had no breakfast just yet, so that's going to result in a pretty grumpy Dave McIntyre.
It could be a misjudgment. I'll know around 8:30.
Hoovered up a wheelbarrow of food ordinarily.
Normally, yeah, just didn't have the appetite this morning. I don't know why. One of the lads in the house last night decided not to bother sleeping, so appetite wasn't quite what it would normally be. Like I said, at 10 to 8 now. I'll know about 8:30 whether this has been a gross error of judgment, and hopefully my mic will not pick up the tummy rumbling because it's right here. It's only about a foot away from the acoustics.
Jockey that one. By one of the lads, you don't mean some random mate that
I don't mean a lodger
over last night, because that's definitely what it sounded like. Busy show coming up between now and 9 AM, as I mentioned, and as we are delighted to have you alongside us. We're going to check out the back pages of the newspapers very shortly. Rugby, needless to say, dominating quite a few of those, and some reflections too on the football of last night. We're going to talk some of that football with Kevin Kilbane. Where will he be this morning? That is the question. We never really know on any given Friday morning what's going to be in the background of Kevin Kilbane's Skype shot, so we'll check in on that in about 10 or 15 minutes or thereabouts. We're also going to be joined in studio by the one and only Matty Williams. He's back in the country and he's going to preview the 2 Champions Cup semi-finals for us this morning, so really looking forward to that. We haven't had him in, I don't think, since the Six Nations, so not that long ago, but we're looking forward to catching up with Matt shortly. That's around about 8:30 or thereabouts. And then another man who's quite frequently on his travels. This time it's a bit of a jolly down to the brand new Adare Manor course down in Limerick. Nathan Murphy's been there. He's just taken 2 days off work, Dave, just to sort of shimmy his way down to Adare, play the brand new course. It looks a bit like Disneyland. And then he's thrown up a few little sort of tweets of himself in action. Not a bad shot, to be fair, from him, the lad yesterday. He was a bit wayward in whatever his approach shot was. He was off the, I think we might call them pine needles if it was in a gust.
Pine straw, he does
enjoyed himself.
He just said what appears to be a beautiful approach into the 18th green. My question would be, how many different videos did he take of himself of all the fresh air shots, the duff shots, and the times he topped the ball?
Here we go.
Look at this.
Oof.
It's a low enough trajectory, but he does seem to have caught it right out of the screws.
Yeah.
And I love the take back on a swing.
I'm not sure. It's McIntyre-esque is what I'd say about it. There's a bit of disparity on the old club head speed there. Quite a slow drawback.
There's nothing wrong with that.
And then, but nothing wrong with that ordinarily, only that the swing into the shot is about 4 times quicker. I would question the control he has on that ball, Dave, is what I'm saying to you. On the club.
Well, the ball appears to have landed on the dance floor, which is all you want on 18. That's the only shot I've seen of Adare Manor with Nathan involved, but I've seen some of the other picks after the course redevelopment. They obviously feel they have a shot at hosting a future Ryder Cup. 2026 apparently, from reading some of the stuff this morning. I mean, a banker is what's been it's been I hope it is.
In terms of,
it is being described as the Augusta National of Ireland, given how beautiful it looks at the moment. And yesterday, with the weather the lads got to play, they couldn't have been more lucky. It does look incredible. I have to play someday. If there are any Adare Manor members who happen to be tuned into OTB
would like this
morning,
schmuck, or these schmucks,
I make no issues with begging you for an invitation.
I'll happily get behind that. Right, time for the newspapers.
OTB AM.
In association with Air. Get Air Sport free with Air Broadband.
Yeah, we're going to start with the Irish.
Bit of John Giles.
We're going to start with a bit of John Giles, and then we're going to move on to the Irish Times this morning. It's obviously dominated, the papers are this morning, every paper dominated by the Champions Cup semi-finals. So it's McGrath and Lowe likely to miss out on showdown with Scarlets. That's a blow and a boost, almost in the same paragraph from Jerry Thorney in the Irish Times this morning. Liam Toland as well writing, Munster can trust their defence and their fitness. Some interesting stats coming into this game about Munster's defence, which we will put to Matty Williams when he is in studio.
The Times Ireland edition there, I think.
Yeah, there we are. That's the Irish Times that we've been talking about. Moving on to the Herald Sport this morning. Leinster bid to see off Welsh and reach 4th European final, possibly against the mighty men from Munster. It would just be amazing if we managed to get an All-Ireland final. And then inside, John Giles, I pick my Premier League team of the season. He's basing it, he says, on grafters and class acts.
That's the John Giles philosophy.
Shouldn't every Premier League team of the season be based on grafters and class acts?
Keith Andrews picked Pope yesterday, Nick Pope in his team yesterday. And as I said to him before we went into the show, Nick effing who? What? And I was delighted to see him make a bit of a howler last night.
I was at Turf Moor the day that Ben Heaton did his shoulder.
And everybody was sort of the sense of this season is gone.
Is it Ben Heaton?
Tom Heaton.
Tom Heaton did his shoulder. Ben Mee, obviously the defender. Yeah. And Nick Pope came in for the second half. It was against Chelsea. No, couldn't have been against Chelsea. I can't remember who it was against. Anyway, that's irrelevant. But he's been brilliant since, to the point where he's been talked about as a potential bolter for England's World Cup squad, because, I mean, it's slim pickings when you're Gareth Southgate. He's
last night would have done him no good at all.
No favours. Obviously, Joe Hart, the previous night, would have done himself no favours. So it's probably between Butland and Pickford in terms of who actually starts in those group games, and between Pope and Hart as to who's going to be the third goalkeeper. So we shall see. The Mirror Sport this morning. Moses comes up roses for Chelsea. It's been a real battle of the Moses-based headlines amongst the tabloid newspapers this morning. Victor keeps top 4 hopes alive just about. Sorry, Sam. Angry Allardyce claims Everton have admitted fans' survey blunder. He apparently, obviously not too pleased by the fact that his fans are being asked to take a survey on how well he's done this season. I think he just said, when he was asked, piss off, and his best Harry Bassett, what was the England manager?
Yeah, Mike Bassett.
Mike Bassett.
You're really struggling with the pronunciation. Harry Bassett.
Well, not quite pronunciation. Just the names.
Slip right there.
Piss off, I give myself an 11.
Yeah.
Which, you know, which Big Sam would.
It also stuns nobody that Big Sam would reflect on himself that way.
Absolutely. The back of the Irish Daily Star today. Alexis on his knees. Sanchez facing Axe for Cup semi-final. Pogba is safe. There's a lot of talk. Alexis Sanchez will have to start on the bench at Wembley tomorrow as United take on Tottenham in their FA Cup semi-final. And some racing circles in mourning this morning because our Duke, a big loss to Jessica Harrington, died of a heart attack. The former, great horse, but the former Irish Grand National winner died yesterday, so I'm sure there'll be a lot of people with very happy memories of backing our Duke in the Irish National a few years back. And finally for me, the Sun this morning, a long way back. Saints losing hope. Southampton now 4 points adrift of Swansea in that final relegation place after drawing a blank at the King Power Stadium, and a long payback. Kev's own goal in Blues revenge. I think he's the 4th Irish player to have scored an own goal in the Premier League. not a group that you kind of want to be part of. And Cup's not in the same league. Mauricio Pochettino saying, yes, it would be great to win an FA Cup if you're Tottenham, but it wouldn't quite bring them on as a club in the same way that emerging from what was the group of death in the Champions League this season did earlier in the campaign.
Yeah, it's hard to know actually. We might talk to Kevin about it a bit later on, exactly how far along Tottenham have actually come from the season last year, where we kind of thought this is going to be a brand new Tottenham that we're going to see over the next few years. They're going to be competing very heavily for the Premier League and the Champions League, and we haven't really seen that this season. I don't know if
well, they competed very well in the Champions League, obviously, and they should have come through that first knockout round with Juventus. They're probably the better team for 60-70% of the tie. Just a couple of 10-minute spells killed them. But in the league, they've been a huge disappointment.
And I don't think the FA Cup isn't going to brush over all of that, you know.
No, I think they need a trophy, but I think they showed in Europe they've made progress, but they need to go an awful lot closer in the Premier League next season.
The Irish Independent this morning here, the front page of the sports section, Dave mentioned the Moses reflections here. Moses 2, Pope 1. It says, the caption there on the photograph, pretty witty one this morning that Dave isn't fully behind, but I mean, I get it, it's biblical reference.
If Moses had scored both, I'd be applauding the headline.
Yeah.
For Moses
beats Pope, I mean, that would have been another option.
Might be a bit too aggressive.
Bit too aggressive. Henshaw returns to soften McGrath blows. We've been talking about there, Robbie Henshaw. The pride of Athlone, Dave, is back in that, looks to be back in that Leinster team. It's going to be named, I think, around midday today. So we'll see how that manifests over the next few hours.
I thought that was you.
Shoulder was myself, Robbie Henshaw, and John McCormack. That's sort of
you're willing to put yourself in that bracket.
Golden triangle, Dave. That's what people talk about.
Henshaw and McCormack must be delighted with that.
McCormack particularly. He's only been dead about 150 years. Stokes faces sack from Greek outfit for week-long no-show. This is by Dan MacDonald, who was on the show last night and spoke a little bit about the latest unwanted twist in the career of Anthony Stokes. The front page of the Examiner this morning, it's Ronan O'Gara's piece here, needless to say for the weekend that's in it. He knows these two teams pretty well. Sentiment aside, Ronan O'Gara, if Racing front up, hang in there when the going gets tough, I fancy them. Now there's an inherent sort of flip side to that. If he's saying if Racing front up and hang in there when the going gets tough, he's obviously suggesting that maybe that might be something that isn't in their armoury. So his thoughts inside there today. And also value veteran Brendan O'Brien writes a piece inside on arguably the best bang for buck rugby import this country has made, and as you can see there's a picture there of Izzy Nasewa looking pretty sultry, so needless to say he gets his nod for that. David did sort of, it's been discussed a little bit on various newspapers across the week with the week that's in it, and it sort of gets you thinking about, it's a difficult conversation to have because there's so many variables, but who exactly has been the most important import into Irish rugby?
Well, if the description you're going to use is the same one used by Brendan there and Bang for Your Buck, I don't think there's a debate.
There's no debate, yeah.
He's just so far ahead of anybody else that the four provinces have brought in over the last 15, 20 years in the professional era, because obviously he's never had to play international rugby while he's been at Leinster, so he's been available for the entire season. His injury profile is off the charts, and that's before we even mention his skill set. And the intelligence that he brought to Leinster and the cultural shift that he was able to bring to them, because he was one of the leading lights in trying to get Leinster from, you know, this stylish flair-based team that never quite got over the line to this hard-nosed, gritty, winning style mentality they've been able to bring in. So, yeah, there's no contest. If you're looking at other guys that maybe have been around for a few years, obviously Dougie Howlett made a massive impact at Munster, and he was very much part of the culture down there, settled in very quickly to the point where he has still had a long-lasting influence on the province since retiring. And then you've got the one-offs. You've got the likes of Brad Thorne and
John Langford and Munster would have been one that Quinny and most
he
of
would have
those
been
lads
longer
would talk
term.
about. Yeah,
and Quinny would have talked about him in the same way that we just mentioned Nassay, where he would have given Munster a bit of a belief that they can win the big games. Ruan Pienaar obviously had a massive influence up in Ulster.
Rocky Elson.
Yeah, he beat like the one-offs, Rocky Elson and Brad Thorne in particular. I do remember when Brad Thorne was signed by Leinster in the 2012 season, I'm going to say. I think it was the 2012 season they beat Ulster in the final, that Jerry Thornley said, yeah, they just won the Heineken Cup.
Right. Yeah.
And it proved to be the case.
Yeah. Devin Toner often talks about him as being the guy who sort of changed his career. Remember, Devin Toner used to be this really wiry, to be fair, he was a young fella at that stage too, really wiry player. I remember talking to him at the Arup Awards that year after they won, after the Brad Thorne year, and he spoke about the impact that he had on his career and like what he was doing in the gym while Devin was at home on the couch sort of having a bit of R&R, and Brad Thorne said to me, you need to pack that in, you need to get yourself down the gym, dude, and bulk up.
Yeah.
So
yeah, he was, I mean, he played till he was 40. Brad Thorne, like an absolute machine. He didn't necessarily train much at all outside of his gym activities because he was just minding his body, and that allowed him to have such a long and fruitful career. So, I mean, if there's anybody else that we've missed out that our viewers / listeners want to let us know about,
get them in.
Obviously, you would have had Bundy Aki in that group. But given that he's a fully fledged Irish international, he probably no longer qualifies. Pat
Lam is probably I mean, I appreciate that we're wandering into coaches now, but when you think about an outsider who's come into a province, Pat Lam is probably the guy who's had that cultural impact.
Joe Schmidt.
Look at it, exactly. It does open up a whole other barrel of stuff that we don't really want to get into. But he's going to say, I think 180 odd caps for.
It's incredible
for Leinster. We'll miss him when he's gone again. Dave, I think is the.
When's that going to be though?
The next time. Yeah, it could be. Could be at the end of this season. Could it?
Oh, you would hope not. Have you been alongside Ethan Athawa recently?
No.
Unbelievable shape for a man of his age.
Brian reckons
it's
he's
incredible.
losing the yard of pace, obviously.
Well, you are going to when you're in your mid-30s. Happens to the best of us. But and
glad you included yourself in that company.
There was one or two times he got caught on the outside against Saracens, and he just didn't quite have the gas to stick with the ball carrier as he would have had in the past. But by the same token, for one of the Leinster tries, I'm not quite sure who finished it off. It might have been Luke McGrath in the semi-final. I might be wrong on that one, but he showed gas that I didn't think he had any longer in his career to beat a couple of defenders on the outside as well with the ball. So maybe not as quick as he used to be, but who is at 35?
Right, let's take a look at the Times Ireland edition now. It's more reflections on the rugby here, this time from Donncha Ryan, who has no regrets over his France move, and sure, why would he? And flying it over there, obviously, had a big say in the pool match as well. I know he didn't do very much in terms of media in the lead into that pool game, but he's across most of the pages today with various quotes about how he is looking forward to this game. That's the Times Ireland edition. In The Guardian here, Mo reflections on Mo Farah here, marathon Mo record holder Jones questions Farah's decision over his coach Alberto Salazar, and reflections too on last night's Chelsea win over Burnley there 2-1. Clarendon Blues, Moses keeps Chelsea's European hopes alive at Burnley as he celebrates there with his team, including I think Alvaro Morata, who was on the pitch at that point and then went off at some point later and threw a bit of a hissy fit because he wasn't too pleased to be getting out of there. He did miss an absolute sitter, mind you. It hasn't quite been proven yet whether Pope in fact got a tiniest of a bit of a glove on it which would have deflected just past the post. It did seem to be that way on the replay, but having said all of that, there's no reason that Morata just shouldn't have absolutely buried the thing.
Yeah, if you can give some credit to Nick Pope for getting a potential touch in it, fair enough. But I thought Morata's second touch just before he struck the shot was
brilliant,
incredibly heavy.
Oh, the one, sorry, I actually expected the keeper to come out of it.
I was just thinking, where's the goalkeeper? He's clearly no intention of leaving his line.
Watching the replay, I wasn't sure. It was a heavy touch, you're right. I wasn't sure, actually. First time I thought keeper should have come out, and then watching it I thought, if he comes out, he's going to be reaching the ball at the same time as Morata.
Exactly.
At which point, I mean, it's in the area.
Oh no, for me, if he had left his line, he gets to it.
Okay.
So a bit of indecision maybe cost him, but if he got a touch and pushed it around the post, well, he'll have redeemed himself in that particular incident. But for the second goal, the Moses goal, caught at his near post, low to his left. It wasn't a great piece of goalkeeping.
The Irish News we can take a quick look at now this morning. This is Donaire's no flash in the pan. This is ahead of his fight against Carl Frampton, that fight on Saturday night. And Rogers, I couldn't be happier at Celtic. And again, sure, why wouldn't it be? That's the Irish News this morning. In the Racing Post then, it's Cheltenham feels the heat after abandoning race. This was on first read, Dave. I thought it was 25 degrees at Cheltenham yesterday, so they decided to pull the pin on one of these long distance races, and I kind of thought like it was the acclimatisation thing. So like ultimately 25 degrees is not that hot really, you should be able to race in it, but some experts were saying that actually that the horses would have felt the impact of having come from pretty cool conditions into suddenly these sort of mid-20s. But there's a lot of people who, trainers and owners, who were pretty pissed that it didn't actually go ahead. They just thought, let's just crack on with the thing. But it seemed to be like, particularly with the ground as well, that it wouldn't have been all that forgiving with those conditions.
Doubt race organisers make these decisions lightly. You know, that's the last thing you want to be doing. I
actually think there's sort of elements of the whole concussion debate here. Like, let's err on the side of caution. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. Yeah. Like, if we think there might be some sort of an element of danger to an animal or a jockey, let's actually just err on the side of caution.
And if a horse dies in that race, well, then the questions are being asked, the fingers are being pointed at the race organisers. So I wouldn't know enough about that area to be casting an expert opinion on it, but it would seem to me that they've probably made the right call.
One quick look at a story we wanted to bring you from the 42.ie this morning, which is that the guy who beat Michael Connell pretty controversially in Rio, the Russian Nikitin, has signed for Top Rank, and it seems like they're going to get her on in 2019. So, I mean, it'll be set up as Connell clearly beat the guy that night, and so that's kind of the thing. It wasn't as if it was this really sort of very close contest that is going to be a brilliant fight necessarily if and when they do get it on professionally. You do really feel that Connell would have the better of him, but a good scoop from Gavin Casey on the 42.ie this morning that we wanted to give a tip of the cap to. So that is what's happening on that front this morning. Keep your comments coming into us on the hashtag OTBAM. Plenty of people in touch, and we'll bring you those a little bit. OTBAM, by the way, is brought to you this morning with Ayr, the home of Ayr Sport. You can get amazing live sporting content free with Ayr broadband. Now, we're going to be talking football very shortly, but I think before that we had a little bit of a clip of John Giles earlier on, Dave, so we're going to hear exactly what he had to say, particularly on the news that was brought to you yesterday exclusively on the Keith Andrews Show, which airs every Thursday at about 12:30 on offtheball.com. The exclusive news that John Walters is staying on with Ireland.
John has been a great servant for the Irish team, and if he wants to continue, good luck to him. As long as he continues doing his stuff, then Martin O'Neill will pick him. We're not that well off for strikers with a lot of young players up front, Richie, as we know. So we're not that well off. Like a fit John Walters playing as well as he can play would still be a huge asset to the Irish team.
Yeah, that's for sure. I think most people have welcomed it with open arms. So Keith and Joseph Conroy went over to Burnley during the week to get the thoughts of Sean Dyche and plenty more as well. Really great access they got to the training ground and to various Irish players, a lot of which we haven't been brought to air yet. There'll be more of it featuring next week on the Keith Andrews Show. They watched training for an hour. They saw the state-of-the-art training facilities, which Keith was raving about yesterday. Recorded interviews with the Irish lads as well as with the manager Sean Dyche and plenty more as well. So next Thursday we're going to bring you the full Burnley special on the Keith Andrews Show from 12:30 yesterday. However, we did bring you this breaking news.
You're 35 in September.
Yeah.
Wes is gone. Darryl Murphy's gone. Martin says you can play till you're 64. I'm not sure about that. What are you thinking?
No, look, as long as I'm needed, I'll play. I think I met with Martin not too long. I think I was seeing a specialist down in London. I went to meet him, called him up and spoke to him, and I knew he was staying on, so I said, I think the plan was we were going to get to the World Cup, it was going to be great. I probably would have retired at the end of it. It would have been the pinnacle, really, getting to a World Cup, and the way it worked out. Talking about watching games, me and Seamus were watching there, and we went to the Wales one, it was unbelievable, and then still when you're watching, I've never been so nervous watching a match. So then to go to the Denmark 1-0 away, I thought brilliant, could bring them home, and it just didn't happen. And to have such a low like that when you're not playing, I couldn't have left it like that. I don't think, and that was probably a big reason behind it. I couldn't have left it like that. Look, if there was players coming through, now that's not saying there's not players coming through, if there's players coming through and I felt like I couldn't help, then
do you feel like you have a bit of a responsibility then, maybe because of one of the elder statesmen, you still think you can do a job, which I certainly do.
Yeah, 100%. I think I can help, and I can, I believe in myself. I think I can definitely do a job, and I'm still fit.
Yeah, that is John Walters catching me off guard there by wrapping up earlier than I'd expected, Dave. So we're going to talk to Kevin Kilbane very shortly and get his thoughts on John Walters continuing with Ireland. It's been pretty well received. Kevin is in transit, as he tends to be on a Friday morning, because he just lives that sort of rock and roll lifestyle. So we'll get his thoughts in a couple of minutes. But pretty good news all around, Dave, about John Walters. And I mean, he'll be 35 in September. But he kind of went back on himself there a little bit when he spoke about the idea that, he said, if there were players coming through, I'm not saying there's not players coming through, there aren't players coming through is the key. And actually having somebody of his attitude and still capacities, despite his age, is a pretty good thing for Martin O'Neill. Yeah,
in an ideal world, we wouldn't need John Walters to come back for another campaign, like a striker who's going to be 35, as you say, in September. But Unfortunately, we do, and he has just been a warrior for Ireland for the last 10 years. He's been part of some of our biggest moments. He's got some huge goals, and he should be fresh coming into September under what you would hope will be a complete full pre-season at Burnley, because he has missed so much of the season. It's been so frustrating for him. Started on the bench when he did originally move from Stoke. They signed Chris Wood, they signed Ashley Barnes, and he has been unable to get into the team. But then the injuries just kept striking. Every time he came back, he would break down again. So you would hope that come September, John Walters is just going to be mad for road and ready to go. You
do understand some of that from Sean Dyche's point of view as well. I mean, because he's got a winning formula, of which Walters has played, I think, 5 games for Burnley this season, and as you said, just been absolutely decimated by injuries. Now, he is back and he's fit. We saw some of the footage of him yesterday, sort of hopping around the training pitch. Not necessarily match fit, but from Burnley's point of view, you're pushing for Europe. You've got a winning formula going on. Like before last night, I think it was like 5 wins in a row or something like that. Like, you're unlikely. I'm sure Walters is absolutely very frustrated by the entire thing. But from Sean Dyche's point of view, it's like, listen, it's a winning formula. It's going
absolutely.
fine. I'm not going to mess with it.
Barnes would have been good this season.
Yeah.
Barnes got another one last night, but I think at 35, he probably knew when he left Stoke for Burnley that he was likely to be playing second fiddle to the strikers that they had there, and he was probably told by Sean Dyche as he moved to Turf Moor that we are going to be looking at bringing in another striker. And Wood obviously had a brilliant season in the Championship last season. Even he hasn't been able to get into the team every week either, because Ashley Barnes has had such a strong campaign. But from an Irish point of view, he's not going to be playing week in, week out for Burnley, so he should be in good shape for us. And
I'm not even sure, David, that he'll be at Burnley next season, I have to say. I think that at that age, at a team that are going to be competing in Europe, obviously, and a team that have ambitions. I mean, look, maybe the European thing is going to take away from their Premier League thing, and ultimately they're going to be operating at the wrong end of the table next season. Who knows? But
I think if they qualify for the Europa League, Walters will stay.
You think, yeah, that actually, because they might have to utilise some of their squad a bit more.
And the reason he went to Turf Moor is because he was able to get a longer contract that they were willing to offer him at Stoke. So he isn't just there one season contractually. Now, obviously, that doesn't necessarily mean an awful lot if another club comes in for him. Now, his head could be turned by a Championship club that's promising first team football every week. And you could appreciate that for a player of his age, that he does want to spend the remaining days of his career getting in as many games as possible. But I think it all bodes well from an Irish point of view. Now, does he start? Does he lead the line? Is he able to get through the huge amount of work that he would always have done when he's wearing a green shirt? Often starting on the right side of a front three, where he's expected to be part of the attack, get up and down all day, protect Seamus Coleman, look after him as well when it comes to the defensive side of things. The engine probably to do that isn't what it was. But at the same time, his experience, his attitude, as you've already mentioned, it's a great thing to have around this Irish squad, where we would hope to see more and more young guys coming in who will need fellas like Johnny Walters knocking around the place just to guide them through things.
Yeah, like Scott Hogan, Johnny Maguire, Shane Long are his main sort of competitors there. So none of those have either been involved long enough yet to prove that they can be the guy going forward, or they've been there for a while and they've proven that they aren't the guy that's going to score you goals every week. So we'll see how that goes. Would you rather be a every week starter in a good team in the Championship that, you know, potentially pushing for promotion, or sitting on the bench most weeks in the Premier League?
How much money am I earning?
Equal. Let's say it's equal in some crazy land. Let's say it's equal.
If it's equal, and I'm 35, I'd probably want to be playing every week, because it's not a
better
huge
for your
club,
Ireland
Burnley.
chances too, isn't it?
It probably is, and if you're at a half decent club in the Championship, the chances are you're probably playing in front of as big a crowd as you might be playing in front of a Turf Moor. In terms of facilities and the stadium, Turf Moor is a Championship stadium now, as we've seen from the bits that has been sent over by Keith and by Joe. They have a training facility that's second to none in the Premier League, so they've definitely worked on things off the pitch, Bernie, and it's definitely adding to how much success they're having on the field. Yeah, well, that's an interesting one. It's something that we could put to someone like John Walters maybe at a future date, but I guess the answer will be in his summer movements. If he's sticking around, for my money, he'll be at Burnley next season.
So we're going to get Kevin's thoughts on this shortly. He's just the latest update on Kevin Kilbane. He is on his way through security, Dave. So, I mean, I was initially going to suggest that would be quite a quick process, but then, given the character we're dealing with, maybe they want to sort of pat him down a little bit and just make sure that
he's probably been taken off to a side room as we speak.
Yeah. So if that doesn't happen, we'll speak to him in about 3 minutes. If it does happen, it might be a little bit longer than that. We do have a poll ongoing, by the way, on the OTB AM Twitter account. This is in relation to our conversation earlier on, prompted by Brendan O'Brien's piece in the Irish Examiner this morning about who Ireland's best rugby import has been. The 4 options are Izan Asewa, Doug Howlett, Brad Thorne or Ruan Pinar. And we've had plenty of you interacting with that this morning, giving us some comments. The answer is, which province provides you with the most followers? Laughing face says Daniel Hegarty. Could make a case for Rocky Elsom too, he says. I think that's reasonable enough. Kieran Cunningham said he could make a case for Rocky Elsom. That was actually his comment. Ale, the Silky 7. Rocky would be my vote. Thomas Chamley single-handedly won them the league, he said. Referring to something, I'm not quite sure what that's about. Rocky Elsom.
You're saying Elsom single-handedly won the league? The European Cup.
The Cup, exactly. And our friend Digger Forum says Dougie has to be up there still working for Munster 10 years later. So that's the latest.
I think the two front runners will be Easton Athewa and Dougie Howlett.
54% back you up, Dave.
Yeah, look, I mean, there's no real contest when it comes to durability and just the sheer length of time and how successful he's been with Leinster over the years. But if there's someone to rival him, it is Dougie Howlett, just for the way that he's got into the culture at Munster. And as our listener there has told us that he's still working at the club. He still has his family there. He's bringing them up, basically. His children are being brought up down in Munster. So
he's not doing it for nothing now, mind you. I mean, he's no martyr.
But he could easily have headed back to New Zealand. He's got a clear love for the province.
Yeah. Virginian on Twitter says Walters isn't needed. It's time for Maguire and Coe to be brought up to the front line. I think both of those things could coexist, couldn't they? Like, it's not as if there might be a lot of games that John Walters doesn't necessarily start. There might be a lot of games that he gets 60 minutes. There'll be plenty of room for those lads to grow. And he's not exactly a toxic presence to have about the place.
To say he's not needed, I find that a bit of a bizarre statement. Why wouldn't you need someone of his experience and attitude and ability, even if it's just for 15 or 20 minutes? What if we get a couple of injuries, for example? We are not well endowed with striking options when it comes to the Republic of Ireland at the moment. And look, if Johnny Walters isn't good enough to get into the team, he won't be in it.
Yeah.
So it's not like he's going to take the place of somebody that should be there ahead of him.
Yeah.
If he's not able to produce what he has in the past, and if Scott Hogan or Sean Maguire, for example, to name two of those, is in a position, or Shane Long, to show Martin O'Neill that they can actually deliver more, well then John Walters simply won't play.
Yeah, and he said that he sat down with O'Neill in that clip, that he sat down with O'Neill, and O'Neill obviously in that conversation isn't saying, well, I'm not sure, John, if you could continue. Look, at if you want to kind of keep coming in. Like, at that point, Walters is going, I'm out. He obviously said to him, I want you got to keep coming.
Yeah.
I've got a role for you, not quite sure what it is, but I want you involved.
And John Walters isn't exactly the type of character that's going to say to Martin O'Neill, if I come back, I want to start every game.
Yeah.
I want a guaranteed position in your 11.
He's not that guy. You've been mistaken from before, actually, haven't you? Isn't that right?
About 1 million times.
Right.
Which flatters one part of this duo far more than it does the other. But I was mistaken for Johnny Walters for an entire cross-channel flight one night. Oh
yes, I do recall that now. What do you think, Kev? Is there a bit of a looky-likey stuff going on there?
There's a massive resemblance there, isn't there? Yeah. Dave's like a smaller version, isn't he? Dave's everything that Johnny Walters wants to be.
Off the field, though.
Secretly, yeah.
It's an off-the-field resemblance. There's very little similarity when we actually cross the white line, as they say.
Kev, I mean, you are yourself this morning looking a little like that guy out of There Will Be Blood. You know, the pastor. Have you seen the movie?
No, I haven't actually, no.
Yeah, we might be able to try and get the pastor out of There Will Be Blood.
He must look horrendous.
Well, he definitely has his top button done up anyway, so that's point one. You're in transit, where are you?
I'm in Manchester Airport this morning. I was at Leicester and Southampton last night, so yeah, I'm just heading down to Cork this morning now.
We might get a bit about that game from you in just a minute. It's obviously very busy behind you there, Kev. You're in with the public area. Obviously, that's pretty clear that you're not. John Walters, obviously the news yesterday on the Keith Andrews show that he's going to stay on. Does he play? Where does he play?
I would imagine. I mean, there were no guarantees, of course, and Martin O'Neill certainly wouldn't have given him guarantees that he's going to start every game. He's probably looking at him as being maybe playing some sort of role like a John O'Shea through the last campaign. I'd probably say he's got more involvement. If you look at the lack of experience that we've got within, certainly within our forward players, with our attacking players, if he's fit and he's able to do the things that we've seen him do over the last couple of campaigns, then he simply starts every game. But I doubt very much he'd be able to maintain that level of level of consistency, that certainly the energy levels that carried him through that last campaign. But again, we'll see how he is fitness-wise when he comes back from the injury that he's got anyway. I think that's the key factor in it all.
Yeah, I think he's getting back from it. There was some shots of him sort of tipping around the training ground yesterday, but he hasn't made very many appearances for Burnley, obviously, this season. Do you expect him to stay? We've just been having the debate about whether he should stay at a Premier League club who are involved in Europe and might need that bit of squad depth, which might see him play a little bit. Or does he get out of Dodge now at this point and become a weekly starter in a championship club? So does he do that, and which would be more beneficial from an Irish point of view?
Well, from an Irish point of view, knowing how Sean Dyche goes about day to day and the way that they train, staying at Burnley will not be a problem for him, even if he's not playing every week, because they try and replicate game time for on the training field. I.e., if you're not in the squad, then on a Monday morning you'll do match-specific sort of training that will try to actually replicate the games that you would have been playing on a Saturday. That's what most clubs will do now, but particularly Sean Dyche. I spoke to Sean about that in the past, so that won't be an issue for him. Personally, he's only been at Burnley a year. You mentioned there he's not played a lot of games over the last year or so anyway with injuries. So I don't see any reason why, certainly from a family life perspective, because that's where he lives. He lives in the northwest. Where is he going to go to? I think Burnley would be the perfect one for him, just to stay there, train, and then get himself prepared for the Irish matches. I don't see it being a problem, actually, fitness-wise.
Yeah, I'd agree, Kev. I really don't see him leaving Burnley in the summer, given, as Adrian says, they may have a Europa League group stage to contend with. It's not exactly a deep squad as things stand. What does this say about the Republic of Ireland setup, Kevin, and the reluctance from a lot of our veteran players to walk away before their time is due? You've mentioned John O'Shea didn't play any games at all during the campaign, but he was happy to stick around. He was happy to be part of it. This is another example of a player in his mid-30s that just wants to be part of the Irish setup. And it's in the week where we've seen Michael Carrick speaking to the BBC saying how depressed he felt going away with England, that it got to the point where he asked the FA not to pick him in England squads anymore. You don't really see this with England. A 35-year-old that's given so much service to the international team coming back where there's no real guarantee that he's going to be playing.
Yeah, I mean, you made a point there. When is your time due? You know when your time's due when, I suppose, a manager's not picking you anymore, when you're not involved. That's when you know that is. I'm not just saying it now, but I've spoke to England players over the years, and a lot of England players that I would have spoken to over the years, certainly through my time, didn't enjoy going away and playing with England. It's a simple fact of it. I've never experienced it with one Irish international, never once. I think the camaraderie that we would have had over the years, I think the togetherness that we would have shown over the years, it kept us coming back more and more. So I don't see that being an issue. I really don't. And maybe in relation to, again, when your time is due, I was getting asked that question. I joked with Dan and Richie last night when I was into off the ball last night. You keep getting asked the question from when you're 27, 28. Is it now the end of your campaign? Are you going to retire? And you're looking at them like they've got two heads. You're thinking, why are you asking this question? I'm 27, 28 years of age. I'm fit. I want to play for my country. It means more than anything to me, and it'll mean more than anything to John Walters. So if he can get, it's not so much thinking he can get another 5 or 10 more caps. He thinks he can contribute, and he thinks he can go to a major tournament. So why shouldn't he carry on? If that's how he feels and he feels fit enough, Martin O'Neill's picking him. I don't see any major problems. Whereas
English players, the excuse probably unfair, but the reason a lot of them have given over the years, looking maybe Paul Scholes, Alan Shearer, to name but two, that have brought the curtain down in their international careers, maybe before a time where they weren't going to be picked in the team. They want to prolong their club careers. They wanted to extend playing at club level by another 3 to 5 seasons, and they didn't need the distraction or the travel or the toll on their body that international football brings. That's clearly not an issue for someone like John Walters or John O'Shea.
No, I understand the logic in that, maybe with a Scholes or an Inter, whoever it would be, but the way I looked at it, playing international football, and again I spoke about it in the past, it was everything to me. I didn't necessarily see Champions League football for me. I never had the chance to, as you know, but I never saw that as the pinnacle anyway. The pinnacle was always to play international football. That was everything to me. So why would I give it up, and why would John Walters give it up?
So you were out and about last night, Kevin. You said you were at Leicester 0, Southampton 0, and so this is 4 points, I think. Southampton are still away from safety now, so their capacity to pull Swansea, Palace, Huddersfield, West Ham back into it has obviously fallen off a little bit since last night. Is that them done now?
Do you know what, Adrian? After last night, I'd say yes. There was a massive chance for them last night against Leicester. Leicester, and even in Claude Puel's words before the game, he was kind of experimenting with one or two players. Played Albrighton at right back, played Dragovic because Dragovic is loans up in the summer. He wanted to see if he's capable of playing next season. When that sort of message is coming out from Claude Puel before the game, Mark Hughes must be rubbing his hands together. And I tell you what, Southampton just didn't start. They didn't get going. And I thought if, and I said it to lads last night, if Southampton do go down, they'll look at last night as a missed opportunity that you can look back and you think, that's us now, because we actually don't deserve to stay in the Premier League with the way that we played last night, because there was a massive chance and missed a couple of chances, yes, in the first half, but they didn't really create anything. Even in the last 20 minutes of the match, they bring Charlie Austin on, they bring Nathan Redmond on, and you're thinking, right, it's going to be crosses going in now, they're going to seriously go for it. They just didn't get forward. They didn't show any sort of attacking threat at all. I mean, I don't know if you saw anything from the game. I don't know if you saw the chances that were missed. Leicester weren't great. Leicester were comfortable. It was a comfortable end-of-season game for Leicester, and I thought it was a massive chance missed for Southampton last night.
Yeah, no, I was watching the other game, so I didn't see too much of it. But Austin came on for long, was it? 20 minutes to go?
Yes.
How did he go? Shane Long.
Shane Long, yeah. He had a really good opening in the first half. It was maybe a half chance on his left foot. He tried to flick it with the outside of his right foot back into the path of Dusan Tadic. Missed the half chance, and then he had the best chance of the game. He was probably 5-6 yards out. He just tried to hit it on the turn. He couldn't really do any more than what he did. It wasn't a gilt-edged chance where you think he has to score, but it was actually Ben Hamer, the Leicester keeper, made a great save, but he had the best chance of the game and it went a begging again.
The other game was the Chelsea 2-1 and against Burnley, and a pretty good Burnley team, to be fair. We've been speaking a lot about them over the last 24 hours and they've been doing pretty well, and they were decent last night. They obviously came back into it with a absolute fluke of a goal. I don't know if you saw it in the highlights, but
no, I haven't seen anything from that game at all. No.
Oh, total fluke. They asked him afterwards, Kev, if he meant it. You might have some sympathy for that. regular viewers will understand that one. But yeah, so 2-1 to Chelsea. It was pretty standard stuff. As I said, a decent enough kind of Burnley team. The conversations about Conte are obviously ongoing. Morata comes off last night. He's flinging his shin pads around.
I read that.
He's not happy. And I mean, maybe the context of the managers, the uncertainty around the manager's part to do with that. One thing that has kind of struck me is why is Conte still there?
Good question. It is a great question. We've probably been saying this since the start of this season, since the end of last season. Things weren't rosy. April, May time, when they won the Premier League last year, you could tell there was a bit of friction between him and the board over recruitment. He didn't necessarily get the players that he would have wanted over the last summer, and that has just been a continuation. That's been the theme across the course of the season with Chelsea. I thought he probably would have gone after Christmas. I thought they might have maybe just brought an interim manager in, just maybe steadied the ship before appointing somebody else this summer, but that hasn't necessarily come about yet. It just seems to me that Conte's gone. As you said there, maybe if you talk about the Morata issue there as well, Morata it hasn't worked, hasn't it? And for whatever reason, he started brilliantly for the season, but he just doesn't look right now. He looks a misfit in that side. And Conte, off the back of that, every time he's coming into press conferences, he's getting asked questions on recruitment, on who and what went wrong who they were meant to be buying and what went wrong over the summertime. And you just think, it's just the inevitable will happen. He will leave. There's talk of PSG for Conte. There's talk of even going back to Italy and coaching the national side. We'll see. But I can't see him being there. No, I really can't see him being there next season.
And all of that, Kev, kind of makes for a fascinating backdrop to this Cup semi-final at the weekend with Southampton, because they only met last week and Southampton had them beaten until they imploded with those 3 goals in 10 minutes at St Mary's. Since then, Alonso has been given a 3-game ban for the X-rated challenge and Shane Long. And it leads me to believe that maybe Chelsea are the perfect side for Southampton to be facing at Wembley. And when I look at Southampton, I'm reminded of Wigan in 2013, winning the FA Cup, having gone down in the same season. And a lot of the Wigan supporters at the time thought, do you know what, we'll take this unbelievable day out, beating City in a cup final with that Ben Watson goal. I wonder, do they still feel that way, given that they've been demoted twice in the meantime and are trying to get back up from League One this season? If you're Southampton supporters and you haven't won a trophy since '76 when you beat United in the FA Cup, where do you rank the two challenges now? Would you take an FA Cup win and head back to the Championship, or is it still all about the Premier League?
It has to be all about the Premier League. It has to be. The argument that you make there is you could maybe right. You may be right. It's fairly valid about the fact is that it's a perfect time to play Chelsea, but it's all about Premier League survival. Last night, the side that they put out, I'm seeing them. I'm thinking, right, this is one big push tonight. Let's make that big push tonight against Leicester. Go and win the game, and then it sets you up nicely for the weekend.
Particularly so as well that they face Swansea in their second to last game. If they could just get to within 2 points of Swansea before that match, it's game on.
Everton they have as well, Dave. I think they've got winnable games.
They've Bournemouth and City as well.
Bournemouth, yeah, of course, that's the one. So I mean, yeah, you look at it like that, yeah, and if you look at it from Wigan's perspective, no, I don't see it, because Wigan hadn't won a trophy in their history. Wigan had never been in the position where they've been into cup finals, and they've never. I think the success that they had of staying in the Premier League, I think it was 7, 8 seasons on the bout. That was there for us all to see. That was a great period in the club's history. Winning the cup was almost like the end of it all, I suppose. Southampton, it's a very, very different position, I feel. Plus, also, Wigan had Millwall in that cup semi-final. If Southampton are to win this cup, they've got to win 2 massive games against Chelsea and then, of course, against United or Tottenham. I don't necessarily see them doing that. So it has to be about Premier League survival for them. That's where they have to actually. That was the remit of Mark Hughes, beating Wigan in a quarter-final. The other week, good performance, but it simply isn't good enough if they get relegated. It's not the same sort of scenario as Wigan, no.
Yeah, and you'd have to think, I mean, if you can't manage to motivate them last night in an important game like that against Leicester to try and get the points in the bag, how's he going to do that in the Cup? So I'm assuming then you're going for Chelsea, obviously, in that one?
Yeah, I think Chelsea. I think even what happened last week as well, I think that's fresh in the mind, the Southampton players' mind, conceding 3 late goals after being 2 up. I fancy Chelsea, I do.
The other one, Kev, United Spurs, obviously, and I mean, this is the most fascinating game. You've got so much stuff going on between these two teams, but I mean, apart from managing to not concede after 11 seconds, what are United going to have to do differently here from the last time these two teams met?
Well, I mean, you look at it probably the Old Trafford game, I suppose, as well. I think that's something that Mourinho would look at. But if you're looking at the Wembley game, when Tottenham scored after, what was it, about 15, 20 seconds into that game, when United just looked awful to start with, 11, and they just didn't get going at all after that. 11 seconds, was it? Good knowledge, that, Adrian.
Hey, listen, I think, work done, Kev. You know, up early in the morning, me.
Yeah, no. Oh, I know, you won't catch you out, will you? I think in general, I think the performance that Mourinho would look for, it wasn't a classic performance when they beat them at Old Trafford, but it was job done. When you watch United, you know, it's almost that's the way it is with Mourinho on United's side. It has to be the case of job done. Let's just basically just see this through. And I think that's how Mourinho will approach it. I think he'll use that performance at Old Trafford as a template if he's going to win it, as opposed to, you know, look on the other side, you look at Pochettino, he has to use the performance at Wembley, because the bigger pitch, and I think the way that Tottenham play, Tottenham, I think they'll both fancy it, of course they will, but it might be one of those games where you might see Mourinho do some sort of man-marking job on Eriksen. You might see him try and nullify their threat and then try and tinker to try to get his side into the game with a Sanchez, with a Martial or Rashford, whoever it will be that can provide that little bit of creativity for them. A
lot of talk in the papers this morning, Kev, that Alexis Sanchez is actually going to be dropped for the game, and it would be either Martial or Rashford that will come in for him. And I was just doing a little bit of the maths on Alexis Sanchez and his time at Old Trafford. Now, obviously, before we go any further, it's very much a small sample size. It's only 13 games, but his assists and goals combined per minute at Barca, it was 104 minutes, 107 minutes at Arsenal, and with Manchester United, it's 156 minutes. Now, again, just 13 games, but he's clearly doing an awful lot less in a Manchester United shirt on a per game basis than he was at either of the previous 2 clubs, and we saw it on Sunday. I mean, he was utterly ineffective, couldn't get into the game at all. Whenever he did try something, it was probably a little bit of the Hail Mary element to it, trying to come up with a killer pass, because he felt he wasn't getting much opportunity to express himself. So when he did so, he probably tries a little bit too much. Is that the right move from a Mourinho point of view, to leave him sitting on the bench tomorrow and go with someone like Martial or Rashford or Lingard?
Perhaps, yeah. I mean, clearly you and Adrian have been up at the crack of dawn this morning studying all your stats, so it's well done there. I think in general, I think it's a great point. You and I were there last week. I think what he did last week, you could clearly see, Dave, at the game last weekend. He was trying his arse off, wasn't he? He was trying so hard, perhaps too hard, as you said, trying to force the issue. His work rate couldn't be denied last weekend, particularly in the first half. The second half, he just went flat. It was almost as if he was like, I've tried everything now, it's not working for me. I don't know if it was a message you have to say, well, look, this isn't working for me, this is not the club for me. I don't know if that's been a bit too dramatic, but I think in general, his body language in the second half had gone. leads me to suggest that, I think it would be the better option. I mean, I love Rashford. I don't understand the reasoning. Is it because Rashford's too young, why he won't play? But every time Rashford plays for United, even if he's not having the best of games, he is providing something. He'll provide a bit of spark for the team. He provides a bit of creativity. So perhaps maybe if I'm judging it from last week's performances, particularly for Sanchez's second half performance, I'd probably go with Rashford. I think he deserves a chance.
The other thing that's pretty interesting, obviously, is like Mourinho was talking about the game during the week. It's been a bit of an audition for some of these players. He's obviously had enough of a whole pile of them. He makes a whole pile of changes. And Herrera, for example, comes in and puts in a performance that I guess a lot of United fans would probably like to see a lot more of. So what does he do with him? If this was supposed to be an audition, he passed with flying colours. He was probably United's best player on the night. What is he going to do now in midfield?
Sorry, who's the name there? Sorry,
Herrera.
Pogba, you say? Sorry, Herrera. Sorry. I mean, the Pogba issue again. I mean, there was all the talk the night that Pogba was sensational. Herrera, played well. He's been doing okay recently. I'm thinking of the game that they played against Man City. He actually played quite well, provided energy to the side. This is the dilemma for Mourinho. No one's able to provide Mourinho with a consistent run of 10 or 15 games and playing that consistent spell over a long period of time where you can think, he's a shoo-in. There's only Matic probably that has played consistently. And even at the weekend when Dave and I were there, I felt he was slowing the game down a little bit too much for United, particularly when they were chasing the match. So what's he going to do? I mean, I think this weekend Matic will definitely start warning. With the way that Pogba played the other night, I think Pogba will definitely start. I think that's the way it has to be, particularly
so there's no
in this
room
game.
for Herrera.
Well, you might put Herrera on the right side of that midfield. That's the only way. That's the only way they can get those two into the side, or those three into the side. That's maybe the only position that he could play, Adrian.
The other thing, obviously, on the Spurs side, it's been a pretty sticky couple of weeks for them. We were chatting a bit earlier on about how it's not been the season I think that everybody had expected from Spurs' point of view, and even over the last few weeks, it's been pretty trying for them. The City defeat, the draw with Brighton, it's been pretty underwhelming from Maurizio Pochettino. I mean, if they get out of Dodge with a trophy, it maybe glosses over some of that a little bit, but there's a bit of a job of work to be done, to use that expression, with Spurs in the summer.
It probably is, but you look at the budget-wise, look where they are. They're qualifying for the Champions League when money-wise, or certainly budget-wise, it suggests that they shouldn't be. So it is another job well done for the club again this year. It's just that question that keeps hanging over Tottenham is they need to win a trophy. And I think it would appease a lot of supporters if they did won a trophy, qualify for the Champions League again. You think that's a very good season for them. And realistically, top four is a good season for Spurs. That's the way that it is. But
do you think Spurs still think about it like that, Kev? I mean, the last season that sort of reset the expectations a little bit in terms, particularly with the Premier League.
But Arsenal's still got a way bigger budget than them. Liverpool do, Man United do, Man City do. They're the fifth. I mean, Everton is a sort of club that's actually on a par with them from a budget point of view. Look how far they are away from. So they are still exceeding expectations within the club and money-wise. That is a thing. I'm with you to your point, what you make there, that there are, particularly when they move to the new stadium, particularly how it's going to go for Tottenham over the next 10 years. I'm sure that many supporters will be expecting, given that they're going to be charging the most for season tickets next season over the next few years, there will be expectations on their shoulders to be winning a trophy and actually seriously competing at the top of the Premier League again.
So how do you actually see this one going, Kev?
Do you know what? I think Mourinho might do a job on him. I think given what he did in that last game at Old Trafford, as I said earlier on, I just think it might be a chance here for Mourinho just to try and maybe shut up shop, try and keep Eriksen quiet in the game. Of course, you've got Ali, and of course, you've got Kane within the game. But I just think United just might have too much of them. I think it'd be very tight. I don't see it being an abundance of goals. I'll probably go for United 2-1 in this one.
Right.
I think this one has extra time and penalties written all over it.
We'll take some of that good action. Kev, I know you're a 9 o'clock flight. Are you near the gate?
No, I'm 20 minutes. I've got to head up there now. No, I'll be about 5 minutes from the gate. Yeah.
Right. Well, look. Before you go, we did mention there will be blood there at the top, and the pastor.
Well, if I miss my flight, and then I'm blaming you lads anyway.
You can blame us. Check out your WhatsApp there. We've sent you on the pic. We're going to give our viewers a look at here. The comparison between yourself and the pastor from There Will Be Blood. Not bad, Dave. I think that's. Are you seeing that, Kev?
Let me see. One sec.
It's on your WhatsApp there. Have a gander. Look at him in his VIP lounge.
Jesus. Bloody hell, lads.
Flip it up there again, Tommy. Give us a look. Ah, yeah.
And I've not got the waistcoat. If I had the waistcoat, I'd be all right.
Here's safe flight. Thanks a million, Kev.
Cheers, lads. All the best. Have a good day. See you, boys.
Take it easy. Kevin Kilbane there on the line from Manchester Airport.
Is it not a 9 o'clock departure?
Yeah. Maybe grand. You know the way. Look, Dave. It's not you or I. Certainly me.
They're going to
I'll
hold the
speak
flight
for
from,
myself
aren't
there.
they?
Absolutely.
They'll look at the roster and go, yeah, we're missing a Kilbane here. We better tell the pilot just to ease off on the throttle there.
Like, we're joking, but that's really exactly what happens with these things. We're going to move on to talk a little bit of rugby. We've an ongoing poll on the OTB AM account where we've been asking you this morning who you think Ireland's best rugby import has been over the past decade. We can only give you 4 options. We know there are other people. People are talking about CJ Stander. We get that. Ian Asewa, Doug Howlett, Brad Thorne and Ruan Pinar are your 4 options. So get on there and give that a bit of a vote. Isa Nathewa was the runaway leader when last we checked in on that. We're going to be joined in studio very shortly by Matt Williams to preview the 2 Champions Cup semi-finals. That's happening in just a moment. Before that, Brian O'Driscoll was on Off the Ball, I think with your good self, Dave, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, Monday night.
In the week on Monday night. Here he is in the potential of an All-Ireland Champions Cup final come May.
Who's the surgeon? Who is the surgeon?
He's a
Bionic man recovery. He's it's pretty remarkable. I saw him actually in London the night of the Grand Slam game. He wasn't out celebrating with the lads. He went to where there was a pub booked for all the Irish in London to have a focal point, and he happened to be in there with his girlfriend, and I could appreciate he felt disconnected from the Slam because when you're not playing in that final game, you just don't feel part of it. But he was an integral part of the first 2 wins. You know, played reasonably well against France. Was going to be man of the match in the second game against Sicily before he dislocated his shoulder. But it's a pretty remarkable turnaround to think that not only is he back in half the time expected if it was 3-4 months, if it's a full shoulder dislocation. I understand modern science, gives you, the less invasive surgeries allow, superior healing time, but that, by any stretch of the imagination, is a phenomenal recovery time. And to hear he's looking sharp, and he's got an appetite, to be playing in more European semi-finals with the disappointment of last year. I just wonder, is Joe Schmidt and his coaching team looking down and thinking, yeah, it might be a European semi-final, but for the summer tour and for making sure that the injury is perfect, did we just hold him back a week? Are Leinster getting full access to him? I don't know is the answer to that, but I wonder, would I be a little bit concerned, on a big game like that, throwing him straight back in? If I was Joe Schmidt, I would be. But I can see from Stuart Lancaster and Leo Cullen's perspective that you have a player of that calibre back, fit him into 12 along with Ringrose.
Yeah, that's Brian O'Driscoll during the week talking about Robbie Henshaw's unexpected return to the Leinster team. That's going to be confirmed, we're expecting, in a little over 3 hours' time when the team is named for this weekend's Champions Cup semi-final. I am delighted to say myself and Dave have now been joined in studio by the one and only Matt Williams. Good morning to you, Matt.
Hello, great to be here.
Thanks, William, for coming in.
Pleasure.
No more than Kevin Kilbane there in transit. You had a bit of a sort of a last gasp dash at the airport last night.
I had a bit of a nightmare travel yesterday. Yeah, got in quite late, about 1:30, but the boys asked me to come in, so I'm here.
You're looking fresh. You're looking fresh on it.
He's just gone straight from the nightclub into the OTB AM studio.
I've just had my daughter talk me into a 21-day detox after the Six Nations. So you've got me on a high point.
Right, good. Are you on like a plant-based diet or what's
Yeah. My daughter talked me into it, so I've actually enjoyed it.
What are you doing?
Oh, mate, you just basically cut down on a whole lot of rubbish and do some exercise, and it's nice, yeah.
So this is as healthy as we'll ever get you.
That's it, mate. And then today I'm speaking at a charity lunch with some of the old Leinster players I work with, so it finishes today.
Ah, brilliant.
so I'm not doing
about lunchtime.
I'm not doing anything tomorrow.
So what we need a still frame photo of Matt around about 1 a.m. tomorrow morning, and then we'll put the two of them on screen on Monday morning show and just see how the two of them compare.
Yeah,
we're going to get to that easy to say the Robbie Henshaw point in just a minute, Matt, that sort of quick turnaround. But before that, we've been talking a little bit about Brendan O'Brien's written a piece in the Irish Examiner this morning about the greatest import into Irish rugby. We've a bit of a poll going and we've a bunch of comments that have come in it as well. We could only pick 4, so that was how we went with it. And it's Isa, Nasewa, Doug Howlett, Brad Thorne and Ruan Pinar were the options we went for. Look, there's some more that you could pick. You can see the latest voting there, 56%. Isa is clearly running away with it. Doug Howlett in second. And we've had a bunch of contacts on it. Lee Murku says, I wouldn't say diluted, this is about the Champions Cup rivalry, more than there's a greater mutual respect there now, both teams regularly being there at the end of any competition and so on. But the comment we want to get to on the greatest import is barely needs a thought, says this contactor. Isa, says Brian O'Driscoll.
Yeah, well, Brian would know.
He would know.
Yeah, I think. Well, on longevity and full commitment, this has had a phenomenal impact on Leinster and has played magnificently. You'd have to probably put Rocky Elsom in there.
He's more of a one-off, though, isn't he?
He was just
like one season wonder. That you knew that's all you were getting out of him. Massive impact, but then he's gone.
Yeah, I think Brad Thorne probably falls into the same category. The thing with Rocky, that particular season, he was the best player in Europe, and I'd be interested to hear what Brian and the boys from that team said. I don't believe Leinster win that European Cup without Rocky Elsom. He was incredible. I happened to be coaching Ulster that year, and we outplayed Leinster in Belfast by a considerable margin and lost because of Elsom.
Right.
He just influenced games.
He just brought that hard edge that they were probably lacking. Just that little ingredient that was holding them back from going to that final level.
Yeah, I agree with that, Davey. He was a tough guy, but he was also in the peak of his form. It's the best season from an Australian six I've ever seen.
Right.
You know, I was only saying that the other day to one of my Australian friends. The only other Australian six I've seen influence a season like that was Willie Offengowie many years ago, who was just awesome. But Rocky was sensational in 1 year. Issa and Dougie, their commitment to Irish rugby over many seasons has been outstanding, so you've got to have them at the top. Brad Thorne, probably a little bit the same. Just an amazing man. I don't believe that Dev Toner would be the player he is without having Brad Thorne on his left-hand side rather in a scrum for that season. I think he just changed Dev in that Leinster side.
He speaks about that a lot, actually, about the impact he had. We were chatting about earlier on about sort of Dev. After training, goes back, sits on the couch for a while, a bit of R&R, and Thorne is saying to him, listen, dude, you got to get yourself to the gym. This is not going to be any good to you. And there's nuance to it as well, because somebody like Rocky who comes in, it's not really so much to do with the culture as it is, like you were saying, about the unbelievable performances he puts in, whereas somebody like Thorne, maybe, actually it's the cultural difference that he brings to it.
Yeah, Rocky was an individual, and I say this in a respectful way, a selfish guy. He was all about Rocky, his performance. He wanted to perform really well and did everything he could. And he, even in the Waratahs back in Australia, he didn't, even though he was a leader, he really focused on himself. So his leadership was me, follow me, where Brad Thorne came out of that amazing production line in Australia from the Brisbane Broncos, because Brad Thorne's spent most of his life in Australia. He left New Zealand when he was a little boy and lived in Brisbane.
Right.
Played rugby league for Brisbane Broncos and played for Australia in rugby league. Right. And I heard him speak, and it's a magnificent story. He only went back to New Zealand for his father, to honour his father. His father died when he was very young.
Right.
And the coach of the Brisbane Broncos, a guy called Wayne Bennett, basically became his male mentor, his father figure. And he went back to Christchurch to fulfil a lifelong commitment to his dad. Yeah, I had no idea. I always thought he lived in New Zealand until he was quite old and came across. But he's a Brisbane boy. And he now lives back in Brisbane. And of course, he's head coach of the Queensland Reds.
Yeah.
Great story.
It wasn't a bad decision, given that he's walked away with a World Cup medal towards the end of his international career, and then he popped up and won a Heineken Cup at Leinster. And didn't he go to Leicester in the following season?
I can't remember.
Won a Premiership medal the year after.
He think he did something like that. Like his record, if you go back on it, so he's won what we call State of Origin in Australia. New South Wales was the biggest rugby league match of the year. He's won the NRL Premiership in Australia, which is quite amazing. Played for Australia in rugby league. Won a Super Rugby trophy, won a Heineken Cup, and won a World Cup. And I'm not sure if he's won the cup. Did he win anything in England?
I thought it did, in my mind, Leicester's last Premiership win was 2013, and he went there after he left Leinster.
Right, he very well may have.
So we'll check that out. But it's an unbelievable CV, and durability-wise, just an incredible ability to get himself fit week after week.
His first senior game was in 1996.
Wow.
And he's playing in 2014.
Was he an amateur? Were the game had they actually turned pro by that time?
Mate, it was in rugby league. So this is a violent, tough game.
Yeah.
And you saw him, you talked to the guys who train with him in the gym, and he was just a specimen of a human being, genetically just incredibly gifted, but his work ethic and his drive and his determination. And you saw it, you could just see Quade Cooper in him in the Queensland Reds really getting on, And he just pumped Quade, you're out.
Yeah, they wouldn't exactly be the same sort of...
No, not his man,
This has just turned into a Brad Thorne appreciation.
Yeah, I'm all up with that, yeah.
He's a great guy.
Yeah, so look, I need to say we have a bunch of contacts on it. Dermot says, clearly nobody compares to him purely for the longevity and the quality that he's consistently produced time and time again. Dermot Rochford says, any love for Paul Warwick? I mean, he was probably an underappreciated player at Munster for a number of years and did a significant job for them.
Bit of a stretch to put him into this conversation.
He's kind of like David Holwell sort of territories of did a job for the province for a while and was a very good player, but I mean
he was playing second fiddle to Owen O'Gara. Or Owen O'Gara to Ronan O'Gara.
You really, it's very clear that you haven't had your food this morning.
But Paul Warwick did a job for them, but not quite sure in this debate.
Colin Tully says, easily, but Brad Thorne was an absolute machine in 2012, the only man alive who would have beaten the mountain in trial by combat. Pienaar and Howlett, both great servants as well. Possibly John Langford, he set the standard, says Mark Cummesky. Like, that's definitely another one that falls into that cultural element of it as well. And Niall Keegan says it has to be Nasewa or Howlett, been there long term, won cups. They're not cash grabbers. It ends with a bit of a needle there at the end from Neil.
Johnny Langford, one of the rugby's gentlemen, lovely guy, great friend of Keith Wood, and Keith speaks very highly of him. And
well, he was the first of the great imports.
Yeah, he was.
He goes right back to the very beginning of professionalism.
Johnny was just one of the most lovely blokes you'd ever like to meet, so it was a really great buy for Munster. The other one I throw in there, even though he was born in Ireland and lived most of his life in Australia, was Keith Gleeson, who I think Keith played 50 odd tests for.
I'm not happy. I'm not willing to put Keith Gleeson in this debate. I can't view him as an import.
True. He's born in Ireland.
We leave it on Sean Goodman for the minute, who says, well, lads, are you serious? Doug Howlett by a mile. So look, everybody's got their own take. Keep them coming into us.
He's clearly supporting Leinster this weekend.
He's definitely done something for Munster, without question. So let's get stuck into the two Champions Cup semi-finals. We're all uber excited about the potential of this All-Ireland final, and I suppose initially with the tough question, Matt, who's going to win these two games of the weekend?
It's just a great weekend, isn't it? It's the first game in the Aviva. I mean, that could be one of the great games of the year. Could be a classic. Quite often in these big championships, the semi-finals throw up the best games. If you go from all sports, football, World Cup and so on, because of the pressure of the final, it tends to sometimes inhibit performance. This could be a great game, and particularly with Leinster and the Scarlets, their history of recent years, Scarlets coming over and winning, but it's both sides playing this incredibly beautiful, attacking, exciting rugby, which means up until the last moment, either side is capable of scoring 2 tries in a very short period of time. So unless a team can skip out to 17, 18 point lead, it will go down to the last minute. You would think Leinster would win that game. But I said that last time they played at the Aviva. And that's the beauty. The Scarlets are coming here knowing they've got form on the board. We've won here. We've done this. We don't have to create history. We've already done it. And a lot of those guys went to Twickenham and played so well away from home at Twickenham. I think it'll be a magnificent game.
They have a coach as well, Matt, in Pivac, who is, like, listening to him during the week and reading his quotes. He's this really relaxed character who's only really been that sort of knee deep in the game, I think, for the last 4 or 5 years. He's, I think, a Kiwi by birth who's very much invested in the culture of West Wales, but like a lot of words this week that would concern you, primarily stuff about, like, we're just going to enjoy the week. Like, he's releasing the pressure from them straight away almost.
Yeah, he is, and playing the old ball. Leinster are favourites, and they're the best team in Europe.
The form horse,
all the good old ones. All of us roll out at that time to try and deflect pressure from your team. Look, he's done a magnificent job. It was interesting. Mikey Ruddock, who I have great respect for, said during the week that he would be a good replacement for Gatlin. Former Auckland.
He's certainly in the running. I talked to him already.
Yeah.
I think he's probably in a short list of 3.
Yeah. He might be a couple of years short, I think. I think he should stay where he is. You usually need... I reckon 3 or 4 good professional contracts before you're ready for international stuff. And it's because it's a different game. It's going to take you a little bit of time to adjust anyway when you go to the international game, because it's totally different from what he's developed at Scarlets. But that's another story.
Can they win with the same amount of ball that they afforded Saracens in the quarter-final? Because Scarlets have such an ability to score from distance. They've got so much pace in their attack. And I was looking at some of the stats this morning. Leinster scored more tries and they've had more clean line breaks than any of the other semi-finalists. But they've missed 151 tackles in their 7 matches in this year's tournament. That's comfortably more than the other 3. I think Scarlets are the next highest on 116. So massive difference between the tackles missed between Munster, Racing, Scarlets and Leinster. If that continues tomorrow, they struggle to win this game, don't they?
They could. I think the big plus for Leinster is that tight 5. That's basically, 4 of the Grand Slam winning pack in that tight 5. I think they'll dominate that Scarlets pack. So it's a very strong Leinster pack of forwards. And we talk about the running game. This whole running game is based on those 8. And they've played really, really good rugby. And I take your point, Dave, and it's a very valid point. You can't miss tackles, especially in big games. I did see, stats can sometimes tell a different story. I did see them play against Montpellier in France, and I felt that was a statement that day, because I was with my wife, said, "Oh, come on, let's have a look." And I said, "The boys probably won't win today. There's nothing on it. They're already in the quarters." And they came out and they were just determined and courageous and hard and accurate. And I just think they've made a statement, a bit like Munster. Everyone's talking about how Munster have missed out. This team has been the best team in Europe for a few years and they've got nothing. And I think they've got the bit between their teeth saying, this is our year. We're not going to let this one go. And I also think Leo will be pumping it into him all week about his missed opportunity when I was coaching in 2003. We came there and we lost a very bad game. There was a very different set of circumstances, different reasons, and irrelevant. But the point was we missed an opportunity. And I don't think this Leinster team is going to miss that opportunity.
Of course, they don't have to look much further than last year's missed opportunity when they really should have beaten Clermont in Montpellier. Yep. Butchered it really after that just dreadful start, and I'm sure they'll have learned an awful lot from that.
The Henshaw issue, obviously we heard from Brian on just a little bit earlier, so he is such a really important player from everything we understand, even outside of the very obvious things from the Ireland setup and from the Leinster setup as well. He's been out for 10 weeks. He's had some sort of surgery on his shoulder. We're told by Stuart Lancaster during the week that he's been part of meetings, he's running faster than he's ever done, he's performing fitter than he has ever done before. It's very different going from all those sort of training ground and meeting room things into the cauldron of a Champions Cup semi-final. If, as we expected, he's named in the team, how does he cope with something like that?
It's also not his fitness that's the issue, it's how he copes with contact. He can't have had a reconstruction because that just takes much, much longer. So, I've had my right shoulder done and I can tell you it takes a long, long time. And as Brian has too, Dricky's had operations on his shoulder. So there's something, and the medical staff don't throw people in too early. There is, Irish Rugby has a great duty of care with their players, one of the best in the world. So he's cleared to play. We don't know the full medical ramifications. Is it a risk? I think it is slightly. Henshaw is a fantastic player. Again, you've got to say, if he goes on and that first big tackle, if he slides on to Williams, Scott Williams is the opposite, and that's his man in their system, he will leave his 12 and go to his 13, and he's got to throw his shoulder in, and that all of a sudden he feels bang.
Will he have had any real contact in training?
Yes.
Has that shoulder taken any punishment in the last week?
The medical staff won't let you come back without doing a full. They call it a progressive return. So start off just on the pads, and then a couple do that for a few days, and you move up, and then there'll be controlled contact where I'm tackling that guy and he just runs, and then there'll be some free contact where there's just a game, and it's where you throw your arm out. The guy steps you and you throw your arm out that way, and it's
weak at that point.
And you do lose. So you're quite strong here. It's at your extremities where you lose your power.
You just open the joint.
Yeah.
So it's the first big tackle is just a mental thing for him, isn't it?
And look,
he gets that out of the way, he'll be all right. It's like a guy coming back from a cruise ship. The first time he has to twist and turn, then he can just go on right. Then he is fine.
Yeah, Dave, you're just 100% accurate. It's when you stop thinking about it. And I always think it's 4 or 5 games. So guys come back, as you say, from knee injuries, and the medical staff say, look, that knee is stronger than the one you've hurt. They've done that much work on it. You're ready to go. You're ready to rock. And the guy will be going out there and going, geez, I hope I don't hurt my knee. I hope I don't hurt my knee. And all of a sudden, in 2 or 3 games, he'll say, I haven't thought about my knee. I've forgotten about it. So Robbie's just a human being and a great player. Like, I think he's one of the best 12s in the world. He's got to have that in the back of his head.
Yeah.
But look, Donald Lenihan said something to me a few years ago, about 2011, about a selection. He said, coaches know best. Leo will not put... Isn't has played superbly at 12. Now, he will not... Now, I know their hand's been forced a little bit by some regulations, but he will not put him out there if he didn't believe he could do a job in a semi-final.
Yeah. Look, that's it. I think we all sort of assume that he isn't necessarily 100% with that shoulder. That's the sort of conversation we're having. And it'll just be, the proof will be in the pudding, but you assume again that, as you say, that the best practice has been put in place in terms of getting him out on the pitch. So in terms of the other bits and pieces, like, I mean, the team has been pretty much consistent across all the newspapers over the last couple of days, so that makes you believe that what's out there is actually real, and that Luke McGrath is not going to be fit and John O'Brien is not going to be fit, and so it means that Jamison Gibson Park comes in at 9. There's a few bits of rejigging to be done with Fardy playing. It means that Lowe sort of misses out, and I mean there's just so many different bits of connotations for the team selection, but one of them obviously being then that Fergus McFadden retains his position on the wing. It tends to draw up 2 sides of the debate about Fergus McFadden and the qualities that he brings, but it was a tweet by Ian Madigan, I don't know if you saw it during the week, saying about the value of Fergus McFadden to that team in terms of his capacity. And actually Murray Kinsella of the 42 had tweeted out a link of him. I think he described him as being a pinball. He had made 3 tackles in about 3 seconds. The unseen value of Fergus McFadden in a lot of ways, Matt, is not something that's often spoken about.
Yeah, great club man. The players love playing with him. That says a lot about him. I think Fergus, I don't know him, I never coached him, but I've watched him a lot, and he just gives you everything he's got. And that's why he keeps getting picked in these sides. He gives something else besides his own performance. And again, Leo won't have just thrown him in. I'd have all confidence in McFadden going out there. I've seen him year after year, and sometimes plugging holes in different positions, just doing that real tradesman's job of making those tackles. And you watch him play and you go, gee, he did well there.
Yeah.
And we all keep underestimating him. We always underestimate him.
I think of all the teams they could face in the semis, having Scarlets and Fergus McFadden in the team is probably a good match.
Yeah.
From a Leinster point of view. James Lowe, brilliant with the ball. He can unlock defences. He's got this really unpredictable element to his game, but he's not the best defensively, and the Fergus McFadden won't fall off any tackles tomorrow against maybe one of the most creative teams in club rugby at the moment. If it was a Toulon or a Claremont or a Racing Leinster we're facing tomorrow, you might want to see James Lowe in the team, because it could be a game that will be decided on one moment of artistry or a little bit of brilliance. But McFadden's going to deliver an 8 out of 10 performance tomorrow.
And Dave, that's probably counted against Lama for exactly that reason. He's a young kid, unbelievable talent, but still not confident totally in his role in that system.
And you don't want to be taking any risks if you're Cullen and Lancaster at that stage of the tournament. We think this guy is going to be a world beater down the track, but just yet defensively we're not sure.
Not ready.
So it's Naseau on the wing then, is it?
Yeah. Put his on the wing.
Yeah.
And McFadden on the other. And then Rob Kearney's obviously having a brilliant season at 15.
And again, you come back to this. He played magnificently at 12. And you put him on this wing, I guarantee you he'll play magnificently there tomorrow.
Yeah.
He's just been... When he came back the second time, I doubted him.
Yeah.
I've got to say, I thought...
Been out of the game a little bit.
What are you doing, boys? Why are you re-signing here? Is this under the old Mates Act? And, I quite happy to put my hand up. I was very, very wrong. He's been superb.
Dan Levy's been talking a bit about this week about the squad, the bitterness after the Champions Cup loss to Claremont last year in the semis, and the defeat to the Scarlets in the domestic competition after that. And he spoke a little bit about how they were kind of fragmented maybe after the Claremont loss, that it had taken more of a toll on them than maybe it might have done. But I'm assuming that you touched on it earlier on, but I'm assuming you might just develop the point out a bit about Cullen and Lancaster, the emphasis they put on the bitterness that they can tap into from the Scarlets of last year. It's a pretty tangible thing to claw onto.
I think you tend to remember the pain of your defeats more than the joy of your victories in your career, and there's no doubt that especially I found for Irish players, that they can use past failures as great motivations going forward. And
we store bitterness well, it turns out.
Yeah, we've got a good, as I said, we're great lovers and great haters. And, you know, I have no doubt about it, and I have no doubt about the fractious nature of a bad defeat like that. I've been involved with them as well, and it takes, that sort of thing is like, it's like a rupturing of a relationship, and it takes time to heal. And someone might have made a mistake, someone might have done something wrong, people might have broken the system, and they look back with regret and probably some accusations on each other, and that takes time to heal and change and move forward. And that's what a great culture does. It allows you to do that. Bad cultures, that fractious position you get into, it doesn't heal, it doesn't change. And that's group dynamics. And there's all these stages. If you do a bit of study, there's about 6 stages of group dynamics on where you are, and you can move through those 6 stages at any time. Good teams are in this harmonious area, and I think Leinster are there right now. You don't get to positions of winning major competitions without having failure in the past. It's very, very rare. And that's why teams don't win every year. To keep that relationship and that group dynamics at that peak level for a decade, like Manchester United did, and we've seen these dynasties that are putting together. Perhaps Man City are doing it. Munster did it for some time. Leinster did it for a period there. Now it's this team, this group of individuals. Can they keep that going at a dynasty, at a level for that period? They've certainly got the talent. It's whether that culture holds them through. But the bitterness, don't worry, mate. That's there. That's there. And listen, I'm still bitter about things 20 years ago. And I know the guys, and I'm not saying that as a brag.
Yeah.
When I say bitter, it still hurts.
I was at that semi-final at Lansdowne Road, man. I'm still bitter about it.
Yeah.
Well, I've got to tell you how stupid I am. I've come over because...
It was a Perpignan, yeah?
Yeah, it was. It was Denny Hickey.
Dark day.
It was the worst day of my sporting
Set
life.
up the worst Heineken Cup final of all time.
Yeah.
An all French final at Lansdowne Road that nobody went to.
Yeah. We lost an unlosable, but... every year I get an invitation to come over, and I think, that's nice, I'll come over. It's semi-final weekend, and all of a sudden I'm on the plane and I go, they're going to talk about 2003 again. I've been set up again for it. But it is, and you have those days in your career. I was talking to Ronan O'Gara there during the Six Nations, and Roger was saying about a few days in, that you can't believe you go into this cave and you can't believe you're coming out of it, because your failure, you perceive it as failure and the pain. And it was interesting after the Grand Slam, where we were all saying the first emotion that everyone feels is relief. You don't feel great joy and absolute euphoria. That usually comes later, usually the day after, or hours after, when it sinks in. The first emotion is, thank God I don't feel that pain. I'm relieved. And you look around, you see your opponent, and that physical collapse. You see people after a big game, the players collapse, as in their knees just give way, they crouch down, they do all these things we do when we're animals to protect ourselves. And it's their emotion saying, I've just been emotionally really bashed up here because I've invested so much of my life and myself in it. And that's the joy and the disaster or the tragedy of sport. And it teaches us about life. We've got to remember why we play these games, to teach young people about life. They all came out of educational institutions. And so you can deal with it in later life. When something really, because losing a game of rugby is not a tragedy, That's not a tragedy. It's a disappointment and
sporting tragedy.
Yeah, well, it's not. We shouldn't use that word tragedy. People, car accidents and things like that, they are tragedies. Losing a game of rugby, whether it was a Perpignan for me and that's not a tragedy in my life. If you're at the poor bloke that missed the 18-inch putt in the US Open, that everyone remembers it. That's not a tragedy. He's disappointed and he'll regret it.
Did you have that perspective at the time?
No, I was mate. I certainly did not. Yeah, I hardly remember the next 48 hours.
Wow.
Yeah. It's actually nice I've never told it. The next day I'm sort of in the car driving up, and I was lived at Greystones, and I'm looking at my wife, so where are we going, what are we doing? She just got me in the car again, and she took me to the hop store and walked through the hop store. She said, I just got to get you to do something. She just did it on the spur of the moment. It was on the Sunday. And I'm walking through the Guinness hop store on the Sunday after we lost the semi-final. I'm going, what am I doing here? And she's just trying to distract me.
Yeah.
And we were all like that. And the next weekend, I remember we all I told the guys, because the Sundays were after us, we said, just got to get out of Dublin. So we all just left, all got out of Dublin. It was a very, very hard 2 or 3 weeks.
Went for a few pints and...
No, we didn't. I actually went over, I went surfing over on the West Coast.
Right, okay.
I literally had to, and the guys all did the same. Yeah. We all got out.
And that was because it just strikes me that having listened to yourself and Mike and Reggie a few weeks ago, and a really good discussion on the Saturday panel, I think it was, with Nathan, about the culture that had been developing at Leinster and where it had come from. And by 2003, almost your expectations were such that actually this is where we need to be, this is just another step on the road. And then suddenly you've been building that culture over a number of years, and suddenly it falls flat in a way that you obviously had not been expecting.
Look, I don't want to there's some things happen in that game, and I'm not going to really dwell on them, because I'd be having to say things about guys, players who are, it's 20 years ago, and they're great guys. They're wonderful human beings. They gave me, I cannot ask more of that group of players that I had, and it's ancient history. So I'm not going to dwell on why we lost the game. But it was, we had such high expectations, and we should have won it. We're not dodging that. I don't believe we were ready to lose in the final. But we should have made that final at Dublin for sure. There's no two ways about it. Interesting talking to Leo Cullen many years later. So Leo will be a very good man to be in charge tomorrow. He said to me something. You know, that group of guys often have talked about it. What happened? You know, and it's usually, it's not one thing. It's not, you know, okay, we did this one. Sometimes it does come down to a missed tackle. There was a number of things. Leo said to me, we weren't ready. We were too young.
Right.
He said we had to lose that game. The disappointing part was it took them so long then to win it. And I think there was a few other reasons which, you know, I'm not going to go into, but they should have won it 2 or 3 years. 2 years later, I think they were set to win it, and they didn't. But it's a nice story coming to where we are with the groups here. You know, probably relating a bit to Munster as well. You know, that particular group weren't ready for it.
Is it cathartic for you, or just a pain in the ass to have to talk about it?
Pain in the ass. First rate.
Move on then.
First rate, pain in the ass. Never want to have to talk about it again.
Mental note to come back and do an hour-long special.
Leinster in next year's semi-finals, we're going to be sitting here talking about it.
No, I'm not coming back. I'm going to check before I agree to this, he's going to check the dates next time. I'm not coming. Semi-final weekend, I'm out.
Here, we want to talk about the other game, obviously. We'll get your predictions at the end as well, but just in terms of the Racing Munster game in Bordeaux, and Liam Tolan this morning is talking a little bit about rope it up. From a Munster point of view, potentially has been one of the routes here on Racing. Let them have the ball, run themselves out earlier on, and sort of suggesting that the fitness is not there, which was a little bit surprising to me, I have to say. But you're obviously keeping a very keen eye on French rugby. Where are Racing at, do you think, heading into this one?
I think Racing are very good. Racing and Montpellier are the best teams in the league, top 14. Very interesting. The French season is so long and so demanding, and they don't give players weekends off like the Irish rugby does, where it manages its top players. There's no doubt the fitness levels are behind Irish rugby. They're not as bad as everyone makes out, but they are behind. And you have an older group. You know, because they bring over all these ex-internationals, their age profile is much higher. But that means they've had many more years of traiing. So you don't train.
Need it necessarily.
You don't train Dan Carter like you might train Joey Carberry. You know, he's 35 and 22 or 21. You know, it's very different. They'll still be a very good side. You know, again, this is the Munster dilemma that we've all come to know. On paper, against Toulon in the quarterfinal, Toulon win that game hands down. Munster come out and win. You know, and they've done that. That's Munster. They just keep doing it. On paper, who wins this game? You know, Racing should wipe this game on paper, but they won't. And Munster have got a great opportunity. I think Bordeaux will be red. I think it'll be an ocean of red. I don't think the Racing people will travel much at all. Bordeaux is an away game for Racing. It is not a home game. They will go there and will be shocked at the Red Army turning up. I think Coach Van Gratten will have turned the South African negative of having to go to South Africa into a big plus. I think
seems to have been talking that way over the last couple of weeks, hasn't he? This was great, best possible preparation that we could have had for this game.
They've had a 2-week camp. I was quite surprised the team he selected for his second game, but they've come out with 2 wins. They've got a few injury concerns, which is disappointing for them. But they've had a bit of time in the sun, got away from all the pressure of being in the bubble down in Munster. Business class flight up, and they're coming for what Munster do better than anyone on the planet, an ambush. And they're going to ambush Racing. Look, both these semi-finals can go either way. But the second semi-final, the Munster Racing semi-final, on paper is like that.
Right.
Racing here, Munster here.
Right.
But that's not the reality.
One thing on that before we get your predictions, Ronan O'Gara in the Examiner this morning, again, he's talking about the quote here, if, and I'll emphasise that word, Racing perform as a team, they'll be grand. He's obviously not convinced. I'm reading between the lines here. He's, the headline is, if Racing front up, hang in there when the going gets tough, I fancy them. Like, there's an inherent if in that, and potentially, even though he's not overtly saying it, they may not do that.
Yes.
In which case, Munster will be going through it, you would assume. I mean, they are a team for a semi-final.
Yeah, they are. Rog, what a person to have. He's Munster man to his bootlaces and spent 3 years at Racing, so he'll know. I think this Racing side, if we come back on the hurt and pain bit and last opportunities, I don't think Racing are going to turn up unmotivated. Dan Carter, this is his last shot. A lot of these guys, this is their last play of the cards. Again, in the Grand Slam, we saw Robbie Kearney and Rory Best play these amazing games because they knew the opportunity wasn't coming back. Robbie Kearney in particular, the last 2 games, you could just see him saying, this may be my last shot at this. And he played extraordinarily well. He lifted his game because of that weight that was hanging over his head. And I think Racing will do the same. It's going to be a real battle. Munster are underdogs in that game for sure. Yeah, and the likes of Donncha Ryan obviously in that dressing room, who's coming from the Munster culture, will absolutely instill all of that. So having said all of that, who's gone through these 2 semis? Oh, well, having just dwelt on my semi-final form, I don't know if I'm the one to ask.
That places you perfectly.
Yeah. Look, I certainly think an All-Ireland final is on the cards, but I'd be more confident in there's more evidence for a Leinster victory and less evidence for a Munster victory. But we all know that's when Munster get up. They get up when they can't. Yeah. All right. Well, we'll hope for the All-Ireland final. Matt, a pleasure as always. Thanks a million for coming in. Adam. Great stuff. Great. Thanks a lot. Pleasure. That's Matt Williams previewing the weekend's Champions Cup action. You can hear live and exclusive commentary of the Leinster game with Dave alongside Liam Toland and Keith Wood live from the Aviva Stadium tomorrow from Dave. 3:30. 3:30. Where it doesn't really matter. The whole show is from the Aviva from 1, so we will be on time regardless of what time kick-off is. There we go. The full show live from 1 o'clock, and then Dave is going to get himself on a nice early flight to Bordeaux on Sunday morning and bring you updates and coverage from the Munster game as well. So all of that to come. Keep your thoughts coming in. By the way, plenty of comments on all of that good stuff this morning. We've one last piece of business to do, which we're going to do in just a moment, which is to get ourselves down to Limerick, not to talk rugby, to talk golf, but before that, Paulie Malignaggi was on off the ball last night. He was talking a little bit about the 6-month drugs ban which had been handed down to Saul Canelo Alvarez.
First off, number one, Nick Diaz was suspended for longer than this for marijuana a few years ago. He's a UFC fighter, okay? For marijuana, he got a 1-year suspension, okay? This is, Canelo gets less than that for PEDs and steroids. That's number one. Number two, along with a 6-month suspension, there should be a mandatory probationary period and at least a fine along with a 6-month suspension. And what I mean by probationary period is for, let's say, I'll give you an example. Let's say for the next 2 years, Canelo needs to be strictly random and regularly drug tested consistently for the next 2 years straight, for the next 24 months straight. And if at any point during those 24 months he fails again, you add 2 or 3 years to this suspension. Okay? Now here's the problem, the hypocrisy of this. This guy brings in so much money that they don't actually want to catch this guy cheating again. They're disappointed that they caught him cheating once. Okay? They didn't, all this, and this is how you know all this drug testing and all this is hoopla is all just for show. It's all just to save face. Because they don't actually want a guy like this to fail. Okay?
Yeah, that's Paulie Malignaggi. You can check out the full podcast on offtheball.com. He was on chatting with the lads last night. Pretty interesting stuff, pretty strong stuff as well. And speaking of drugs cheats, there's an interesting piece In the Irish Times this morning, Armstrong settles federal fraud case for $5 million. So this was the case that US Postal had taken against him for, I guess, sort of contravening the advertising standards code. And everybody was kind of interested to see exactly how it would play out, what was going to be the outcome. And so he's had to pay $5 million here. Yeah, look, it's kind of an interesting one. I think that there was certainly a conversation at one point about the vast swathes of money that the government was asking for, $100 million at one point. And I mean, that would have left a pretty big dent in Armstrong's pocket, obviously. And I mean, not too many people would have shed a tear about that. But just some interesting stuff. I mean, his legal team have been talking. They've said, you know, we've had exactly the same view of this case forever, which was that it was a bogus case because the Postal Service was never harmed. Like, I actually buy that. I don't really buy the Postal Service was negatively impacted upon for a bunch of years because Lance Armstrong was doping. So that certainly wasn't the case when he was riding. And so do we assume then, sort of after he comes clean, so he's stripped of his titles in whatever it was, and then a year later he comes clean, do we think that people are suddenly saying, oh, US Postal now, I mean, I was going to send that package via US Postal, but I mean, you know, it's UPS for me now. I don't think so. I don't think there's any negative impact on their brand, really.
Well, it doesn't do your brand any good to be associated with a convicted drugs cheat.
I don't think it impacts
to have your branding emblazoned all over him and his equipment for a significant period of time, to have found yourself in a position where you're paying significant bonuses to Lance Armstrong for the biggest wins of his career. It's not something you would like to be involved in. So while it might be difficult to actually pinpoint specific harm that's been done to the brand, it hasn't helped it.
See, when Armstrong was active, there was a niche amount of people saying, we're not sure about this guy, is he clean? That's really my point of view. I mean, in some sort of hypothetical situation, Dave, that a current cycling team was at some point down the track to be found that their riders were doping. I mean, there's been ongoing conversations about that. I think that the Sky team, for example, have had much more negative impact on their brand over the last number of years because of the accusations and conversations that are ongoing while that's active, I believe, rather than US Postal. That I think that really at the time the conversations were not, there was not overt conversations about whether Lance Armstrong really was clean or not. Most of the media
well, it's a bit
were going
different
along
because
with it.
Sky obviously are over here, all of the races are over here, the riders are based over here, whereas I wonder how much Tour de France type discussion would have been ongoing in the States at all at that time. Cycling ranks very low on the list, and the vast majority of sports fans in the States wouldn't have been aware that US Postal was sponsoring that
all
team.
the more reason I think.
So that's why it is around 5 million, not the 100 million that we'd initially heard of at the very beginning of it. But my point would being, it's not going to do your brand any good to be associated with Lance Armstrong.
The one thing we can be regretful of in this entire saga, Dave, is that it says here in the Irish Times that the settlement averted a trial scheduled to begin with a jury selection in about 2 weeks in Washington. I mean, that would have been box office.
It would have been great to watch if it was televised as well as a lot of these trials are. The most disappointed man will be Floyd Landis, who probably thought he was going to walk away with about $20 million. In the end, he's going to get about $1 million.
Yeah.
Not bad, but not what he would have been looking at when the file was initially sent in.
Not a bad day out. Right, we are going to get ourselves to Limerick, I think, Tommy, and we're going to speak to Nathan Murphy, who's been off out in a jolly for the last couple of days. Nathan, we're not exactly sure why you haven't been in the office, but you might start to explain some of that.
Well, I'm here working hard, Adrian, because 4 of the finest golfers in the world are in Limerick today. It would be remiss of us as journalists and as those of us who dedicate our lives to a golf podcast not to be here to see if Rory McIlroy, Padraig Harrington, Shane Lowry or Paul McGinley say something interesting. So that's the only reason I'm here. Totally for work.
Dedicated your life to the golf podcast, by the way. I mean, I've heard stretches in my time. That's definitely one of them. So you were obviously then, in that context yesterday, you carried out 4 feature interviews, which we're going to hear on Off the Ball pretty shortly.
Well, yesterday was more a day of relaxation for everybody, particularly golfers, and I didn't want to upset them. They were doing some much-needed practice on the greens and on the driving range. So, listen, you understand this.
Yeah, we're going to dial you out there. We're going to dial you out, Nathan, for 2 reasons. One, your line isn't great. And secondly, you're talking absolute shit. So we'll get you back on the line there in just a minute. See if we can get some sense out of him. He's down at Adare Manor, Dave. This invite went around the office a couple of weeks back to see who had the sort of time in their week that could actually get them down to play this incredible new course. Adare Manor, that's been written about by Charlie McQueen, the Examiner today. They're talking about it being pretty much a banker for the Ryder Cup 2026. Like, it seems to be Disneyland for golfers.
We thought there would have to be lots drawn in the office, but one by one, unfortunately, the various candidates fell by the wayside for domestic reasons.
He's on the move, Dave.
He looks.
He's got the self-portrait up on the wall.
Everything's brightened up.
Yes, this is my great grandmother.
She was pretty masculine looking, I won't lie to you.
I moved to one of my other rooms within my bedroom.
Oh no, it's actually a woman, I take that back. Is your room sort of half of Adare Manor? Is that what's happened?
I have one of these very nice suites that has about 4 different rooms within the same room. You guys wouldn't have liked it. It would have been too spacious for you. Would have been too spacious.
Why have we got him on this morning?
I'm wondering. What do you
really wouldn't have enjoyed the tack bar that they spent a lot of money on, which is one of the finest whiskey selections in all of Europe.
So you're still drunk, is what you're saying?
I wouldn't like to be tested.
Right. You were out on the golf course yesterday, and you were tested because you were pretty wayward with some of your shots. But decent recovery here. Tell us about this shot. What hole was it? What was going on? Who was holding the camera?
This is the 18th. My caddy was holding the camera. So if you come to play at Adare Manor, you have to have a caddy with you, which is obviously an enormous advantage. So the 18th is pretty famous. It's where Richard Finch fell in the water on 18 when he was winning the Irish Open in 2008. This was my 3rd shot from the pine straws, which unfortunately I sort of snapped up to the left into punk.
Where did that ball land? I mean, I can't, outside of it leaving your club, I have absolutely no idea where it's gone.
If I had any sense, I would have done a little celebratory jig and pretended it landed a foot from the hole. Unfortunately, it was a snap hook to the left into one of the bunkers. I then hit one of my best bunker shots to land it about 4 feet from the hole, but the greens are so fast here, it rolls straight over the full length of the green and into the water.
Well, I mean, to be fair, you did have the greatest caddy of all time, because after you hit that shot, he said, "Oh, nice shot."
Yeah, it was a very, very, very nice man was Tom, who helped me around yesterday.
Give him a good tip.
The course is unbelievably good. It is without the best parkland course in Europe. The job they have done here, turn a very good course into what they want to be the Augusta of Europe. That seems to have been what Tom Fazio, who has redesigned this, was the spec he was given. Tom Fazio was here last night, who has done a lot of work on Augusta. He was described as the only man who can blow an unlimited budget. And when you look around here, I think that's probably what he has done. Padraig Harrington actually was quite involved in the initial stages as well. It was interesting listening to Fazio talk about how all this came about. When JP McManus bought this place 3-4 years ago, Tom Fazio was brought over with the intention of maybe having a look at a couple of the bunkers and maybe redesigning 5 or 6 of the bunkers. Himself and Harrington met up, and between the two of them, they somehow managed to convince JP McManus to redevelop the entire site. And when you look at it, it has European Tour event written all over it, and you just had to see the people who were here last night. George O'Grady, former European Tour Chief Executive, Keith Pelly arrived in as well. You'd imagine this is going to be a Ryder Cup venue, more than likely in 2026.
Yeah, that seems to be the sense, Nathan, is it? That's what this entire thing is building up to, that it's Charlie McQueen, who was just saying there, is writing pretty extensively about it in the Examiner this morning, and he certainly believes that's what's happening here.
Yeah, that seems to be the full intention. Part of today and part of the reason that Harrington, Lowry, McGinley and McIlroy are here is to launch the Pro-Am, which is in 2020. And while the Irish Open has got to a high level recently in terms of the calibre of players it can bring over, still nothing matches the JP McManus Pro-Am for star power. Tiger Woods comes and plays every time. I'm sure he'll be here in 2020. They fully intend to have all the world's top 10 here for that when it takes place in 2 and a bit years' time. But then it could host an Irish Open, maybe 2021, 2022. You'd have to think a World Golf Championship could be on the cards as well over the coming years, but it all seems to be focused very much on the Ryder Cup in 2026. And I was talking to a guy last night from Atlantic Construction who built this entire place, who are a company from down in Kerry, and they say it's very much future-proof, that already the roads have been built to a standard that they can withhold the load that's going to come from a Ryder Cup, that the underground cabling has already been put in for a major European Tour event. So that's the sort of way they're thinking with this.
How much has been spent on it, do you know?
I don't know the exact figure, but it must be in the tens of millions between the golf course and the renovations for the hotel as well.
I'd say that, and a little bit on top, a little bit of gravy on top of that. Right, that's pretty much it. I mean, you've justified your existence if I haven't gone down there. And if I'm being totally honest, I couldn't hear most of what you're saying. The wallpaper is so loud, it's impossible to hear what you're saying. No, you are...
There is, so the four lads, the four players are doing a press conference shortly, and then they're going to play a competition. It's going to be McIlroy and McGinley against Lowry and Harrington. It's all for charity. The winners get 350 grand for charity. The losers have to make 150 grand for their chosen charity. Hey, Lowry was... making the point last night that maybe they're just going up against Rory and sort of hanger-on.
Right, the Nathan Murphy junket tour of the weekend doesn't quite stop there either. I mean, if you could just put your face back on video, that would be that'd be great. You're off across the pond tomorrow, Sunday?
No, tomorrow I'm going to be alongside Mr. McIntyre
yes, at the Aviva.
Leinster. Sunday, we got live commentary of Arsenal against West Ham. It's the big one, Adrian. You know it. 1:30 Sunday.
Good man. Enjoy. That's Nathan Murphy there, live on the line, Dave. I mean, I was sort of wishing I could have gone down to that, but
I need to get the phone out because I'm pretty sure that the game he's just been describing does not kick off at 1:30 Sunday. Oh.
Right.
No, I'm wrong. It does.
Oh, well, thank God for
there
that.
is a 4:30 kickoff, but
I mean, look, it says it on the graphic, Dave. I mean, what more do you need?
There you go.
It's gone 9:30 on this Friday morning, so we've been with you far longer than we really should have been, but we have appreciated your company and your comments, and the poll continues as to who the greatest rugby import into the Irish game has ever been. I think Ian Aseba is going to walk away with that. Let's hope that he and Leinster and Munster as well walk away with the Champions Cup semis this weekend. We appreciate your company this morning, Dave. Appreciated your company.
No
Go
problem.
and get yourself some food. The crankiness hasn't quite manifested itself in the way
I've been okay.
I thought it might.
I've survived.
Get some protein into you, you'll be grand.
Exactly.
Good morning.
OTB AM.
In association with Ayr. Get Ayr Sport free with Ayr Broadband.